Let me show you real quick how I make my sea moss. I don't typically measure as far as water or as far as the amount of sea moss. This is Irish sea moss, by the way. It's this one right here. I usually take a handful of sea moss and I put it in my blending cup, pour some water into it. I try to do it up to the line. Now, if you have a bigger cup, you have to be careful because you don't want to over water the sea moss. I don't need that. If you have Irish sea moss, you tend to want to go with less water and then add if you need it. And then if you have the other sea moss, like the gold or the purple, it's a whole different species of sea moss. So you put more water for that one because it tends to get thicker faster. So I can see like the way this is, it's probably not enough water, but I'm gonna start, like I said, on the light side. Typically, this will make me 1 to 2 jars of gel. It's hard to say this much sea moss to this much water because every time you get the sea moss, the different strands will be different. Or it's hard to ever get an exact amount, but you'll be able to eyeball it based on what you need. So for instance, if you are taking it by yourself, you only really need 2 jars that'll probably last you weeks. So you just need basically a handful of sea moss and then just go from there. You don't need to make the whole bag. Just make as much as you need, store the rest of it, and just do it that way. Or you can make it all at once and then you can freeze the extra. Here's the key though. Just know if you put it in a mason jar, don't fill it to the top because the sea moss expands. Also make sure you have the thicker mason jars like this. If you have the thinner type of mason jars, they'll crack easy. Even if you put it in glass containers, make sure it's heavy glass, or if it's too thin, that sea moss expands and it'll break. So let's blend this up. Now, real quick, depending on the power of your blender, you're gonna have to blend the Irish sea moss longer because you see it has the little fine pieces and it takes longer for it to break down. If you have the regular, like the gold or the purple sea moss, that breaks down real quick because it doesn't have the little fine blades in the sea moss. So just blend it, a little bit longer depending on power of your blender. You're gonna have to blend it longer versus other blenders. So for me, you see how that looks? I usually like it blended down a little bit more, especially if I'm making it for myself. I like to test it. If it feels gritty, then it still needs to blend a little bit more. So this still feels a little bit gritty, the sea moss. Even when you see the flakes in it, it should be smooth. So I'm going to put a little bit more water, just a little bit, and I'm gonna blend it some more. It doesn't take long to blend. Let me test it again, make sure it's not gritty. It's still a little bit gritty. And you can see it's starting to thicken up. So depending on how you like your sea moss, sometimes some people like it real thick. Other people like it on the looser side. I tend to like my sea moss more loose. I'm gonna add more water. And this is how I do it every time. As I go, I test it. And you'll start to know how you like your sea moss. Like I said, it shouldn't be gritty and grainy. So I'm gonna keep blending it. But as far as the thickness and the texture of it, that's dependent on how you like it. So, just keep blending it and adding water if need be until you get it to the consistency that you want it. Just for context, the whole video without being edited was under 10 minutes. But of course, I'm trying to edit the video to make it a little bit quicker. Also, understand this. You don't have to keep stopping and checking it the way I do. I'm kind of doing it just so you can see the process in case you go through it where the sea moss isn't blending the way you want it right away or it's a little bit gritty. But also, my particular blender, I can only let it run for a minute before the motor will shut off. It'll overheat. So depending on the kind of blender you have, you can just let it run for a few minutes and you don't have to keep checking it. You don't have to keep worrying about it. So just take that into consideration. People think it takes a long time to make sea moss. It really doesn't. Even with all this stopping and me explaining that it took under 10 minutes. If you just throw it in the blender, put enough water in there and let it blend for a few minutes and then you're good. It is not a long, complicated process. When it's been blending for a while, it's gonna get warm. That's completely normal, don't worry. Experiment, you play with it and get it the way you want it, see? So it's all blended up. It might seem like a lot of back and forth, but it really didn't take long. It's really not time consuming. And there you go, so this is one. I don't know where my other mason jar is. I've been making sea moss all day. So I already have these two. I got my other ones in the fridge, but like I said, this is gonna be one Obviously this is full. This would be about maybe another half almost. So that shows you just that handful that I made is gonna make about a jar and a half of sea moss, depending on how much you water. If I wanted to blend this down and add more, then it's gonna make more. So that's the other thing. Depending on the water that you add, you're obviously gonna get more gel. So, you know, just play around with it, figure it out, see what works for you. You'll start to get the hang of it, but just have fun with it. Don't overstress it, because whether it's too thick or it's too loose, it's still gonna work for you. As long as you're getting it in your system, it's gonna be good for you. So don't overstress anything, don't worry too much. Just get that sea moss in your system. If you want the best, highest quality sea moss that you can find on the market, where can you get it? RadarPlusNutrition.com. Let's go, let's get healthy, people. Salute.